was contacted by an NGO named CIMAD, that is an NGO that was that started just after World War II, actually in 1944, before the end of the war, sorry, to help Jewish people who had been deported to come back to France and settle down. So it was like a rescue organization that was originally Protestant, from Protestant people to help Jews in 44, and it's called La CIMAD. And this organization has several branches to bring law support to migrants in France. It's quite big. And they have one branch that goes into prisons. It's the only organization that is allowed to go inside the prisons to help foreign prisoners to help them judicially, how do you say, to bring lawyers to assist foreign prisoners inside prisons. And so they called me to do a 5-minute, 10-minute piece for the internet about what they do. And they introduced me to several foreign prisoners who were out of jail, and some had been deported and came back, and some were waiting to know whether they're going to be deported to their so-called home country. And so I started with one interview with the Congolese character of my film, who is also a hip-hop guy. And after I did this interview, I was I felt very strong with the issue, because this man has gone to jail like 6 times. He arrived because of the war. He should have been a political refugee actually, but because of injuries he committed, he never got, stability in terms of legal documents. And he was very strong. Psychologically, I was very impressed by this young guy, because I thought, I don't know how I would be crushed after such an experience. So I thought, okay, I can't see just one guy. So then I saw other people, and that they introduced me as well. And then I thought, no, but I don't want to make a film just with testimonies, because what it would provoke is compassion, nice, but compassion is not enough. So then there was second stage of shooting, where I went to see some legal people, lawyers, judges, and professors of law. But then I thought, no, but this is not enough again. So I went to a third stage of shooting, where I interviewed some politicians from Senate and deputy parliamentaries, and philosophers, specialists in jail, and a historian, specialist in colonial history, and to really dig further, of how this phenomenon that we call double penalty in France, which is that you get deported after jail sentence, reveals to us a bigger structure of how our institutions function. Yes, of course. This flag is a flag from 1929 that I bought through eBay. It's not like just any flag. It's a flag of a period that I wish France doesn't go back to. And during Sarkozy's regime, people were talking about immigrants of third generation. So for me, there was a big backlash politically, that maybe around me, people didn't realize how hardcore it was. But it was very important for me to say, okay, let's ring a bell, to the past, not to repeat it again, So I use this flag as a motif, plastic, aesthetic, and concept motif, to say, okay, what are our principles, and in which way does the system work, and how far is it consistent with the principle or contradictory with the principle. Well, for me it was very important. It was a choice to film people after jail, because I'm not in jail. So if I go in jail, I take something from you that can be kind of voyeur or sensationalist. But I thought when people are out of prison, they are also on a kind of self-reflection of their journey, and maybe they need to talk as as much as I need to listen. So the relationship between the person who is filmed and the person who is filming is for me ethically more balanced, you know. And basically what I did is I meet the person first without camera, have a long chat, then give him some DVDs of previous work so the person sees who I am and where I stand. And then if the person agree, we go to an interview. But I already had a discussion before. I already check legally if what they tell me is true, because in the interview process I'm not a cop, I'm not a judge, but towards the audience I need to make sure that what is said is true, otherwise the argument can fall apart for, you know, stupid reasons or personal reasons. And then the interviews were long, like 4 hours, 5 hours. Sometimes also we meet twice, because I asked, did you say everything you needed to say? And the person can tell me, no, there's something I must say that I didn't think about. So it's yeah, that kind of process. Yeah, of course, they are the first person to see it. Then the reaction is different because it depends if they are now safe, legally wise or not, you know. First of all, as you know, some people are anonymous in the film and some are not. So the reason of why they are anonymous differs. For example, the Algerian man who, you know, committed a crime is not anonymous because of legal issues. He's anonymous for personal issues because first he paid his debt to society, 12-year sentence is very long, and he doesn't necessarily want his new entourage to know what he did 14 years ago, you know, people he works with, his neighbors. So this man is anonymous for personal reasons. So him, I doubled the voice, dubbed from an actor, so we don't recognize his voice, and I put this shadow image. The other man that we see from the back is anonymous because he works in a school, and you're not allowed to work in a school if you've been to jail. But if I can bring him to Q&As with me after screenings, discuss with the audience, there's no problem with that, you know, so it's different reasons. And then the Senegalese man, he still has no papers, but he didn't want to be anonymous. He said, let me face it and look at people straight in the eyes. What have they done to me? I want to address it and confront it directly. So all these different positions vis-à-vis the film and vis-à-vis their own reflection to their journey, you know, and their relationship with the French state. But so far, I think everybody understood the purpose from beginning, and I didn't face any hostility whatsoever. That film is that we co-directed it with Gaël Leroy, with 2 writer-directors on it. It was pre-bought, so it was commissioned by television, France 5, which is a broadcaster from France Television, public TV. But I think they commissioned it for the wrong reasons. We had written before that a lot of documentary projects that are linked with the French colonial past that were rejected. But this time, you know, the war was so big and so hidden, and, you know, with the archives that are classified for 120 years, that I think they thought it would be some sensation project, you know. And also at the time we told them that we're going to talk about oil, because the oil prospection is concurrent to the war. And I think that's why they commissioned it. But then the film we made was what we wanted to say, so it fits another agenda. And so they programmed it at a bad time, like Sunday at 9 p.m. and only once, although there was a lot of reactions in the internet and in Cameroon as well, but there was no much reaction in France. And national identity was not supported by any organizations in France, any institutions, there wasn't any money put by the state in this film. Actually, we produced it with a bit of crowdfunding through the internet, which allowed me to pay the editor of the film. Not very well, but at least to pay him something. And the rest is money I raised by myself, doing some other jobs and put this money into the film. But we didn't have any subvention, any television, any state fund, nothing. Actually, this film for me really talks about France, and I wanted to address French audience, but it's been selected to more festivals abroad than in France. So I was a bit surprised about that and disappointed, I must say. And of course, when your film is not supported from beginning, your audience is smaller after, you know, because you don't have this big media, you know, screening your film. So it's kind of difficult, and this film is a political, militant film for me. It's not just a film, it's something I must address. So I've put it for free in the internet just before the election, between Sarkozy and Hollande, just before the last presidential election, during 1 week, because it was so important for me. And then recently also on a left-wing think tank that has a lot of clicks, you know, just for people to see it. But now I'm trying to set up a screening at the French Senate, because for me it's really addressing institutional racism, so it has to be screened in the institution that vote this kind of laws. Maybe it would be a bit pretentious because I'm not somebody very famous, so it's not because I do a film that things are gonna change like this, but I aim here to participate to that. The first film I made in '96 was made of testimonies by Senegalese people who'd been deported from France after the first restrictions of immigration laws, well, the second wave actually of restriction. And you know, we have the luxury to come and go, and you know, when you get close to people and you see that this relationship is disbalanced, especially when you get into, you know, affective and close relationship with people, especially in countries where France is still so present, continues to attract people through TV, through media, through politics, through history books, through language, through school programs, through bank organization, NGOs. You know, we feed that dream of France, but then we deprive people who believe in this dream to go and see by themselves what the reality is like. And I mean, when they do the accounts of immigration, always putting it like it's not something that is economically wise possible in a time of crisis and all that. First of all, those figures are not true, because the serious studies prove that immigration is really a gain for the countries in Europe. And so I don't understand why people don't speak about that, not to be sentimental or good heart or whatever, but just to speak the simple facts and figures. And also France as a former empire has a specific relationship with those countries, and we cannot just close the door when we think it's convenient for us. And I mean, you go to countries where there would be very strong reason for hostility. And by the way, I think this hostility is gonna come by the next generation, because at some point, you know, it's really too much. And people don't misjudge you with the policy of your country. And then the reverse is the absolute opposite. I mean, immigrants are so objectified, you know, in our countries, not perceived as individuals. And that's very disturbing. Of course, it affects one professional journey. There's so many ignorance, you know, a lot of, you know, racism has different roots. There's a long historical root of racism in our countries, but there's also a voice that gets a mic. That's why in my film, to go back to national identity, I didn't interview the people who are against immigration, I was told, but your film is not balanced. I say, but these people speak all the time. They have open mic, they're on television talking, newspaper, radio. So we know that voice, you know. I don't need that in my film. Yeah. I'm working on 2 projects. One is set in Dubai, in the Emirates, because I went there to screen the film a few months ago, and it was very interesting for me to go to a country where local people are an ethnic minority, because the Dubai people in Dubai, they are like 7% of their population. So you have all this, you know, globalization movement where you see faces from all around the world, but of course with some lot of issues, you know. And so I'm trying to write a documentary set in Dubai that deals with national identity there, in the continuum of this work, but from another perspective, and that deals also with time compression. So I met someone who is the age of the oil, the discovery of oil in Dubai, and when he was a child, this was a very poor country, and now this is what we all hear about, and I'm trying to see how in one man's time, or human life, this time span is so compressed. And I'm working on another project that deals with the way artists talked about colonial relationship through cinema, music, theater, literature, photography, and art in general. And this is a project that is a montage film, you know, is to put together correspondence aesthetically and historic and politic correspondence between some art pieces from Renaissance, because that's when colonization started, right? It's with Christophe Columbus, to now, and see how some stereotypes travel through in and out the colonial barrier, because I think the alienation process is in both sides. What I mean is there's a historian from Cameroon named Achille Bembe. He said Europe has to decolonize oneself, and I really believe that it's not just the other person. When we talk about all this, we talk about ourselves as well, about our subconscious, about all our reading of the world, you know, and power relationships. And so you have a lot of correspondence through art that I find very interesting. For example, there's a famous sculptor named Ousmane Sow who did a series of sculpture that is based on Leni Riefenstahl's work. And so, you know, you see how concepts like authenticity, exotism, all these kinds of ideas were built through the time